Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for being here in the studio. How is the audio working for you? Is it better?
Yeah, it's much better. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me again.
This is almost 1 p.m. Eastern time in Canada, in North America, and
Or you're cutting out there.
about again is another exciting session, enlightening topic on how all right on how we can be much better in our role, in our capacity being leaders. So here we have Rob we left last week. Last week when we were discussing on about a situation where a person the person joins and on how to. Is it better or is it choppy, Rob? I feel
It's
like
very
there is
choppy.
some problem in the internet.
Yeah, I
It
can't.
is, right?
Yeah, I missed 90% of what you said.
That's okay. I will repeat. I was asking time when we left the session, we were talking about
You're still cutting out.
just it is still cutting out. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I will stay with you, Rob. Okay, I
I I can't hear you too well.
I will log out, Rob, and I will log back in.
Okay, sounds good.
Just give me a couple of minutes, okay?
Sure.
Maybe you can continue. If your internet is better, you can continue.
Sure. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session uh, where we're talking about leadership and a lot of the leadership aspects, and for new leaders and people that have been in leadership roles now, and we wanted to continue this conversation. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, perhaps, is and please put in your questions or comments in the comment box so we can address it accordingly. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is uh, you know in terms of management and bullying. I've heard some horrific stories throughout my career, and I recently came across a good friend of mine who's been experiencing this at his organization, and I think it's very devastating to have what you want to call people in executive roles and their narcissistic behaviors towards their employees. To me, that's the biggest no-no. And in my opinion, there's no way that you can call yourself a leader if you have the tendencies to bully your team and employees to a point that they have to take time off work. That's just it's just nonsense in my opinion. And I'm not sure how. I know how, but I'm not sure how this is allowed from an organization standards and culture where they allow this these type of people management in these roles, just because you've got some record of building sales or having good numbers doesn't make you a good leader. And the minute that you're bullying your team and you're forcing people to go on sick leave because of your actions, to me that goes against everything that leadership stands for. And I think I haven't seen that, change yet. There's a lot of complaints that I hear from people with respect to their organization and certain managers that they have, and these folks are at a high level. So we're not talking about junior managers or newbies. These are executives that have been there for quite a bit, and I don't know how that gets tolerated in certain organizations. So, what are your thoughts on that, Wajid?
Thank you, Rob. Sorry for that initial glitch on my side. I just changed my
No
position. I hope it is better now. Okay.
It's better now.
Yeah,
I can
no,
hear you now.
I guess that the point that you were talking about, I might have missed the first few seconds of it, but I think you were talking about the leadership role on being. So I will just take a step back, and I will focus. The comment I was making earlier was about the situation where we were talking about that during our last session, and that was related to a person who just gets promoted to a new role within his organization, or maybe he goes out and start working in a new organization, but now he's working in a leadership role, and the challenge is that he's never been in that leadership role. He was always in a situation where he was reporting to as a team member, but never a situation where people were reporting into him. So now he's a people leader, and the challenge is that he's never been in that situation now. So now he has to understand different personalities that works into his under his team, and at the same time he has to make sure that he makes all those people reporting into him, he makes them and turns them into leaders themselves going forward. So what are I guess the first, or maybe the few recommendations that would come to your mind for such a person where he just got promoted and now he has this big challenge of first understanding the team, making sure that everybody gets the required output, but at the same time he can be an effective leader so that he can turn the people working for him into leaders within a given time frame.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that. So again, as I alluded to last week, in terms of leadership coming on board, and then now your job is to create other leaders within the organization. It's very important to lead yourself first. So remember that everyone's looking up to you as this new leader. You have to be walking the talk. You have to do as you say as well. So you're setting those expectations. And I talked about situational leadership. So again, when I say situational, it's not just pertaining to the situation itself. It's also people. People have different characters. Everyone is different. They come from different backgrounds, cultures, genders, whatever it may be. You have to be respectful towards these individuals, and you have to get to know them on a personal level as well. And that's how you start influencing people. Remember, as a leader, your job is to influence and impact. You make that impact on people, and by doing so, it's you have to be authentic. You can't try to be someone else. You can't try to duplicate somebody that you like being. You can take certain aspects of good leaders, but at the end of the day, you have to be authentic. And when you're authentic, that's when you allow people to access you, to come and talk to you openly. Put yourself in anyone else's shoes. That in order for you to be able to open up to somebody and trust somebody, you gotta be able to be yourself. And in order for you to be yourself, you have to develop that trust with that person, and they have to be authentic to be able to open up to them and trust them. So an authentic leader is super important. You have to be authentic, and you have to allow people to open up to you. And in order for you to do that, you do need to be vulnerable in a way, but remember you have to set those boundaries. But that situational leadership plays into that key aspect where you're treating people differently with different not treating people, I mean you have to look at the situations with people differently, because people have a different character that you cannot paint everybody with the same brush, right? Everyone is
Yeah, that
different.
makes sense.
Everybody brings. So that would be my take on that.
Well, that's a really great suggestion. I think it's really important, as you said, for anybody, he or she in that leadership role, just starting, just got promoted, or just being given that opportunity. And now you're absolutely right. Understanding the team could be like having one-on-one sessions with each team member, understand their personality, be open in the communication, and allow them to be open with you at the same time.
Yes.
I guess I also heard and read somewhere, being a leader, I guess you don't need to. Perhaps it's sort of a natural thing that is associated with the human. But being what the comment that I'm making now is, being a human, we have a natural tendency of I guess talking much of the time and not allowing other people to talk and express their opinion. I guess being a leader, you have to take a step back and give space to your team, give space to the people working with you, allow them to talk, to speak up, to express their opinion, in a fearless environment. Uh, and I guess you don't need to. What I'm trying to say here is, maybe you need to listen more than you're talking, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. What I've seen in my career, all the effective leaders, and I have read biographies and did some research as well on the leadership itself. If you allow people to be open in the communication, to be themselves, who they are, uh, you yourself, and at the same time your entire team, your entire organization, have the opportunity to grow significantly and achieve the targets and goals, no matter what you have set for yourself or for themselves. Because if you're open in the communication and you allow them to express their opinions, there's a great opportunity where you can all grow together. So to your point, you're absolutely right. Having an open channel of communication, allowing everybody to consider themselves as valuable part of the team, and not just there to do their job, but also to contribute to the success of any organization, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that listening piece is super critical in any leadership role, because if you're not listening to your team, as you know, you've seen some quotes around, they'll stop talking to you and they'll stop bringing up issues. They'll stop bringing up ideas. And how can you grow and scale as an organization if you don't become creative and innovative? And that innovation only happens when you allow people to express themselves and express what they want to bring up and what they want to talk about. So listening is crucial in any sort of leadership, in any sort of relationship. So take that back to your relationship with your spouse, with your kid, with your friend. If you don't listen in any of those aspects, it's very difficult to have a good relationship with any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a step forward now. I think we gave that, and we kind of painted that initial, I guess, that initial starting point for a new leader. But now, going forward, you have a couple of years of experience in leadership. Hypothetically speaking, that person has now gained a couple of years of experience in that leadership role, and now the time comes where he or she has to do some hiring, right? So being a leader, when you start looking for hiring new team members in your team has grown up, and now you're looking for hiring new team members into your team. being a leader at that point, Rob, what comes to your mind? Of course, you have to look into the job description. You have to identify and specify what the job needs and job requirements are. But on a personality level, if you have to sort of, I guess, define the key traits for a successful team member, is there anything that you would allude to for the audience listening here? Is there like sort of a guidelines that you would recommend?
Yeah, so if you're talking about hiring practices, I'm not a big fan of the traditional hiring practices at all. Resumes for me is just a small piece of what that individual brings to the table. You have to understand as a leader, what do you need? What are your requirements in terms of, what is this individual that's coming in your organization going to be doing? I think a lot of times, organizations and HR rush to put these generic job descriptions out where they don't even take the time to actually reflect on what this individual is going to be doing. So when you do that, you're starting the process, in the wrong side, because the person you're attracting to is looking at that job description saying, oh yeah, I can do this. But meanwhile, you have something totally different in mind for this individual. So again, having a proper job description where it's not generic, it's detailed to that specific job that you're hiring for is one. For me, I like to do a screening call. And in that screening call, what's important to me is your resume is one thing, but your character and attitude for me, that's what I hire based on, your character and attitude, because the way I see it is I can always train you for what you want to do. So it's very important to look at attitude and character. So I ask specific questions relating to goals that people have, their values. If their values are not aligned with myself or the organization, how can we ever be successful, right? If we're not aligned from the values perspective, right away there's a disconnect.
Sure.
And also, I want to see, what extracurricular activities, like for me, volunteering work outside of, outside of what you've done from an experience aspect is very important, because it shows me that you take initiative. You're not driven just by money. That you lead, you have that leadership skills and giving back to the community. So those things are very important for me. And again, it's you have to have those expectations, including your salary range up front, because if you have a process where you're interviewing somebody, 5 different times, and you come to an end and you guys are way off from a salary expectation, now you've wasted sometimes months of that process, which you could have eliminated right off the bat.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I totally agree with what you just said, and I think as you mentioned, the values, of course, resume and understanding the experience and qualification is important. But to your point, it's significantly much more important to have a detailed job description given to that specific role or personality that you're looking into hire. And then once you're into the interview process, then find out if, as you said, understand that person, understand what values he or she is bringing to the table, if that aligns to your personal values, to the organizational values. And if there's a disconnect, then I think at that point you can make a call whether it's a go or a no go for you going forward. At the same time, you really made a good point about the salary expectation as well, because if you don't have clear expectations on the salary from the very initial during the very initial phase of that process, then when you reach to the end of the process and you're about to hire a person, and then you, on both sides, you realize that it's not a true match for what the expectations are, then you have wasted the entire process, entire time for yourself and also for that individual. So absolutely, that's great point. Now moving forward, go ahead, Rob. You wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add a few more points to that. One is, again, a lot of these big organizations take anywhere between, months. I've seen up to like 5 months to hire somebody.
Right.
You got to be very mindful, and I'm not sure why, the leaders at the top are not seeing an issue with this, where if you're taking that long to hire somebody, remember, you're losing a lot of good talent, because if somebody really values themselves, they're not going to stick around 5 months for you to, get your paperwork and process straightened out. That's one. Two, I think some organizations, and I did a podcast on this recently, which will be out. They like to play these games where we equate it to the dating game rules, where you wait a specific amount of time before you reach out to people. So you don't want to seem desperate, etc. I don't like those rules. I don't like games. Look, if somebody's good, if they're good at what they're doing, make them an offer, right? Don't wait around, because I've seen companies lose great talent like that as well, because they could have two offers at the same time, or an offer
Right.
that's coming up close, and you can
Right.
lose good people. The third thing is, when you hire a star employee or a good employee and you put them in the wrong seat,
Right.
they won't last long, right? So make sure that the role is the right role for that person.
That's right. That's a great point. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. What happens with all these big, I can't say maybe, I think maybe all is not the right word, but with majority of the organizations, they take a lot of time to make a call on the final call on hiring the right individual. And you're right, people are not going to stick that long for that final offer, because if anybody is skillful, he or she has experience, he knows about the industry, he or she may have like a couple of offers already sitting on the table. So if you like a person, then go ahead and make an offer to them. Why you're waiting for such a long period so that you waste that talent? So, and you're right, it's I don't know why it is like this, but I guess it's sort of ingrained in the industry practice that people take a lot of time to make that call. I don't know if we can change that mindset, but it's gonna take some time. I guess people are now speaking up, like people like you, and I've seen other folks talking about it. But I still believe it's gonna take time for people to change that culture of hiring.
Well, if you don't change it, you're going to lose out on a lot of good talent. So it's, you can sit back and watch other people hire the talent that you wanted, or you can actually do something about it. And, the individual I was on this podcast with brought up a great point. If you're making a sale, or, would you wait around to reach out to your customer?
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
what's the difference between a customer and a talent?
Essentially, they're the same thing. Basically, you're absolutely right. It's a great analogy that you're making with the sales, because if you're talking to the customer, if you're talking to an individual employee that you're anticipated on hiring, it's sort of the same process. So if you're not giving them that offer, then you're losing that opportunity, right? It's just similar
Yes.
to the sale process.
Yeah.
Rob, I have a couple of things that I wanted to bounce off you, and I think it's kind of related to the same thing. So, let's say now you have a person hired on your team, you make the right choice, you go through the process, and you extend an offer to the person, and the person accepted it. Now they become part of your team. I think we talked about it in our previous sessions as well, about the trainings and stuff like that. But there are a couple of other things that comes into that process, and one of the thing is employee engagement, right? So you hire a person, you go through all the pain, call it the pain process, where you're doing interviews with numbers of candidates. Now you have shortlisted one, you extend the offer, somebody accept it, and now they are on your team. Now how would you keep that person, that new person coming in your team, how would you make sure that you engage them into your call it organizational goals, into day-to-day activities? What would you do being a leader to make sure that your team is engaged? Because I have seen, and I think it's very common that yes, people do everything to make to hire the right person, but then once you hire them, then you're not able to keep them engaged. So
Yeah,
there's sort of a
great,
disconnect
great
in the
point.
process.
That's that. Your first impression is very important, right? Your first impression as an organization is when you bring people in, do you have a proper onboarding process? So is the person coming in ready to go with their hardware, software, everything set up, or are they waiting 6 weeks to get a laptop, waiting 4 months for IT to download a software for them? So for me, it's very important when you start hiring somebody, have everything ready before they start. And if you know the process takes 6 months or 4 weeks or whatever it is, initiate that process earlier, right? And I've seen that where you totally turn people off right off the bat. So challenge people, when they're in a role, they only see what they see themselves. So if there's a project that might be challenging for them, get them involved in it. Involvement is very important. Clear, concise communication, set those expectations right off the bat, get them involved in that team. But the main thing is you already have to set up that good positive environment for people to thrive in. And when you build trust, you have the communication, you have the involvement, you delegate, you get their input as well. That's how you build that engagement,
Right. That's a good point. The reason I brought up this point is I've seen all these, even in the multinational organization, what happens is they have a sort of a very streamlined process, a very lengthy process, as we said earlier, about hiring a person. Then the person comes onto your team, and then there is no further defined process for keeping them engaged. And once that person, that's a valuable, that person consider him or herself very valuable, comes to the team, and then there's a disconnect, there's a disengagement in the organization, and then you realize within 6 months to maybe a year time period, that person leaves the organization, which again is a waste of time for both the parties. So
yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I was trying to say is, I feel like for the organizations, for the corporations, there needs to be sort of a process where they keep on training their leaders, so train them, make them realize how important it is to value your team and to make them engaged into your day-to-day activities so that they feel themselves valuable. I feel that piece is missing. There's no such a process in place for leadership training in most of these organizations.
So yeah, I want to distinguish the two. Engagement is not driven by process.
Okay.
Engagement is driven by leadership.
Makes sense.
Now, and this is where you're talking about that leadership aspect is missing, and that's why you don't have engagement. So that missing link is, again, you're right. Leaders are thrown into the fire without any training, without any coaching, without any mentorship. That's the process that you need to have, right?
Right.
And when you have that lined up, and now you're setting your leaders up for success because now they know what to do and they've got the tools and the techniques, then you create that engaging environment. But you need the support and the training.
Yeah, I think I will leave it. I will wrap it up on this comment, and then I will ask final thoughts from you as well. Now, we both have worked in larger corporations and in larger organizations where there are thousands and thousands of employees working, and also I've worked in smaller organizations as well where there are just few hundreds and maybe less than 100 employees. They're sort of two different things. But no matter if you're in a larger organization or in a smaller organization, companies or leaders need to invest time and money both in training their people and becoming and making them more effective leaders. If there's no training, no coaching, no mentorship in place, then you as an individual and you as an organization, you can't expect the results that you're hoping for. So what are your final thoughts about it? And then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, again, like you said, with some bigger organization, look, they got to have an incentive, unfortunately, for these, for you to develop leaders, because let's say you work in a space where you're a monopoly, right? When you're a Rogers or the Bells of the world, and there's no competition, what's the incentive to create leadership? So you bring managers that manage the numbers, and that's what you're doing.
Sure.
I think, again, if you look at the smaller versus larger organization, in a smaller organization, it's the bottom line is very important. You're driving everything to increase that bottom line. So leadership is vital for your growth. But I think that's where we're missing, that these larger organizations have given up on the leadership aspect. And in my opinion, in some cases, they don't even care much for it.
Absolutely right. So thanks again, Rob. We'll continue building on this. For now, we will thank everybody who listened to this as a live podcast or who listened to this as a recording. We'll make sure that we keep building on this. I would encourage all the viewers taking interest in this podcast. Please leave your comments. Your feedback, your comments is really important for us to grow as well, because
yes,
we want you to grow, but at the same time your feedback help us to grow, and that actually gives us insight on what is it that you guys are interested in listening in our upcoming sessions. So please leave your feedback. Make sure that you leave your comments, and we'll come back with some more enlightening conversations in next sessions. So thank you again. Thank you, Rob, and we will stay connected. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.